Hey Stampers, Rachel here from Rachthestamper.com, and today I want to show you this really pretty card that I created all on my own. Can you believe it? Sometimes we come up with those kind of cards where we think, I don't know, less of ourselves because we copy somebody's card, but I came up with this idea. I thought it was a really fun card to make, but I want to show you a couple things. I was trying to block out. I always forget about the glare here. I want to show you a couple things that you could swap. So this card uses an older embossing folder. I think it was called Seabed 3D, which I don't believe we currently have. So if you have this, you could use it. It's got like a sea texture floor. It's really pretty cool. And the reason that I added it, honestly, is I felt like the card alone just needed something. So that's why I did it. Now, I wanted to show you, there's a couple things you could use. We do have this is going to be a suite that's carrying over. So you do have the soft waves if you wanted to just add something. It's basically, you want to add something to it that you can add just a little bit of ink. So this is probably a little difficult to see, but you can kind of see because of the torn edge. I actually just ended up using my mini blender brush, and I added some basic beige, which is kind of a strange color on its own. It almost has a green tint, but if you do it really lightly, you can almost get like that sandy floor kind of color. So there's that one. And then I know that our catalog is coming to an end. This is the big annual catalog, but we'll have another one. And hopefully you'll like it better because I hear the design layout is a little bit better. But you could use anything that would basically just give you some texture that you could add to. So I would even say you could use timber because it's just, you basically want to be able to add a little ink to the edges. You probably could use whatever this Dashing Designs is because it would just give you a little something. Even the cane weave would be pretty cool. So you might have something else. There's also was an Ocean Waves embossing folder a little bit ago. So I'm sure you'll find something that you have just to add a little something to it. Now, the card base is actually done in Azure Afternoon. So this is a long ways card. So it is 4 1/4 by 11, scored at 5.5. We just have a whisper white panel on the inside. Again, I stamped the starfish in Flirty Flamingo, and what is that peach color? It's a light petal pink. And then I added the beige again, so it kind of gives like that sand. It's a really nice color if you use it lightly, but if you use it heavily, it can have a little bit of a green hue. So just be aware when you're using it. And then what I did is I actually created a little mask. Now, I had one already used because this is the one we used for all the rest of these. This isn't it. This is the inside, but you could save the piece. But I figured I would show you how to make one in case you've never done it. You do want to make sure that you create a mask for the whole front of it, that we don't have any overlap. And I'm just using a piece of vanilla. So for our card today, and I'll show you, this is one that I did that went way wrong. I ended up stamping both sides of the turtle because it is a double-sided stamp. So this is the sea turtle. It's been around for a good while. And what you can do is, if you want to get more out of it, this one goes to show you, you have one side that has texture to it. So it'll have all these little bumps when you stamp it. And then the other side is just smooth. Now this does have some embossing powder on it, so it needs to be cleaned. But the other side is smooth. So basically you can stamp it and get the texture. Now it doesn't match, but you can stamp it again and it kind of gives the outline. Really gives you a lot more that you can do with your stamps. So what I originally did was I stamped the turtle on the more detailed side, and then I inked it and flipped it over, and it turned out like this, and I thought it was just horrible. So I decided back to the drawing board, and then what I did is I just did the outline and kind of colored it in while it was still wet. So I'm going to show you how to do all those things today. It sounds like a lot, but it's really a pretty fun card to create. Just because it has a lot of different elements to it when it's finished. It has the embossing. You can see there's a little bit of Wink of Stella. There's different colors. There's different aspects to it. So I think it is pretty cool. The only thing that you want to remember is that all of the stamping that you do on this card, you want to do before you run it through the embossing folder. And the reason being is once you stamp it, it could be a little wonky. But if you stamp everything first and then run it through, it gives it that depth, which is pretty cool. So we are going to have my little kit here. I'll get all of this out. So you have a panel for the front. It's really easy. A panel for the inside. That's pretty much it. And there's just a little work you're going to do ahead of time. So these are these stylish shapes. I'm sure probably we'll get rid of this now since I finally remembered the name of it. But we're going to use the square. It's the largest square die. And what we're going to do is, again, this is just kind of approximate. I'm just going to move this guy out of the way. So we're going to just kind of line this up. Now I know this does overlap slightly, so you could cut it. Actually, I'm going to do that just to make it easier so you understand. I'm going to cut this down. Instead of it being a full panel, I'm going to cut it down to 4 by 5 1/4, because that way it will 100%, you can kind of tape it to the edge. It'll hopefully make a little bit more sense. And then what we're going to use is the spritzer tool. So maybe you've had these and you've never really known what to do with them. I've used these on a lot of videos. The cool part is you can put any color ink in it, and you want to use rubbing alcohol. You can also put in, if you have any kind of a shimmer spray, Stampin' Up! Used to carry these. They're made by Fantastics. It's an all-purpose shimmer ink. They come in different colors. They used to carry these, but they stopped. So if you happen to have this, if you have a shimmer paint, there's another kind of shimmer paint you could use. I think there's Perfect Pearls is another thing that you could add into it. But with this one, in case you still have it, you want to make sure that you always shake it really well first. And you only need about 1 heavy drop. You don't need a lot, but I'm sure you can get this online somewhere. I don't doubt that they're out of business because it's an amazing product. And what you do is, so you will put a little bit of alcohol in here, and then you put in a drop or 2, depending how much you want of your ink color. Then you could put in the shimmer, and then basically what you do is really, really shake it. Now, if you ever use this, as I do, I have many of these that just kind of sit. Sometimes before you get going, you just need to clean out the spritzer again. You might need to run it under warm water, but otherwise, easy to use. You can keep it filled. So I have about 6 of these right now, and I usually just buy 2 more if I need something different. If you don't add ink to it, you can change the color, but I'd say if you have the color sitting in there, you probably want to stick with what you have. So I would only use this again if I was using maybe a blue or a green ink. If not, if I was going with something lighter, I would just get a new one. They're not really terribly expensive. So back to this, what we're going to do is we're going to just kind of set our square die approximately where we think we want it in the center. It does not have to be perfect. You just kind of eyeball where you like it. Make sure it's mostly straight. I am die cutting this without being able to lean straight because I am filming with the camera up here, so I can't really lean in. So hopefully it's straight-ish. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to run it through my die cutting machine. And what it's going to do is make a hole. So kind of like we're making a little bit of a mask. I'm going to just slightly change it. Now, one thing to notice, in case you are new to stamping or card making or die cutting, when you have a die cutting machine, what it has in the middle is a roller that basically puts pressure on this die to cut. If you have a die that has a straight edge such as this, it's a lot of pressure on the straight line here and also on these that sometimes it can make them warp a little bit. So my suggestion to you is if you ever have something and you have the room, just tilt it just slightly askew so it's not hitting straight on the line. It's just a little bit easier on your dies, especially if you use them a lot. So I'm going to just run this through the die cut machine. And here is what it looks like. So move this over. We are going to need to do something else with our die cutting machine, just with the embossing. So I'll show you that. So again, this may or may not be perfect. It's kind of just an eyeballed area. And then you can always save this for something else if you wanted to use it in the future. And I do reuse my Post-it tape and whatnot. So that's something, if in case you ever see me do something, I do usually use it over again. So now we are going to use, I did this purposely with vanilla so you could tell the difference. We're going to layer this on top, and then you can take your piece of Post-it tape or whatever it is that you used if you want. This is optional, you don't have to do it, and just kind of wrap it around. This just ensures that it's not going to move. And then you definitely need something to protect your work surface. So I'm going to move this guy over for a minute, move all my other pieces over, and you kind of want it, I will say, I'm going to just adjust this just a little bit because I don't really want to try to have a gap. If I can help it, you can see it's bowing just a little bit. So I actually think what I did on this is I actually taped it to the protective sheet. So they are lined up. That way maybe it'll stay down a little flatter. Try to get any little fuzzies. That looks much better. So taping it down. So then I'm going to just give this a shake again. Move my ink pads out of the way. And I'm going to try to spray up just a little bit so I'm not super duper close. And you don't need a lot. So start with less is more. Because you don't want it to be overwhelmingly concentrated or wet, because you want the water-ish that the turtle is going through. And also you have to remember the turtle is a darker color. However, you don't want to make the color on the bottom so pigmented that you can't really see the turtle. I hope that all makes sense. Now, just to speed this up a little bit, I'm going to go ahead and get out my heat tool, and I'm going to just heat this to make sure that it is dry fully before we stamp something else onto it. And that will just ensure that the ink doesn't run when we add the turtle, and that everything is nice and smooth. So I'm going to just take this, and we did use the same mask over for at least 8 cards. So you don't need to just do one and done. I guess when it kind of gets a little bit warped, maybe you could stop using it. But if you let it dry in between, you really shouldn't have any problem with it. So I'm going to turn my heat tool on. And the heat tool, in case you don't know, it does have 2 settings. Number 1 is for drying, but since I'm drying something that was pretty heavy, I'm going to use number 2. Number 2 is more for heat embossing. And I'm going to just rotate this kind of all around. It is alcohol, so it will dry rather quickly. So you can see right there is a pretty wet spot. And you may not be able to see, but because it does have shimmer in it, maybe you can see it on the side there. It is really pretty. It has a cool shimmer effect to it. So this is dry, but we are going to still use this to be able to do our turtle. So let me grab the turtle. And I actually used a couple different colors for this. And I'm going to just clean him just to make sure everything's okay right before I get started, because I don't want to have any splotches when I show you this, so it's pretty good. Looks good. I do have a little bit of wet spots around the edge since I sprayed the block instead of the, I should say I sprayed the stamp instead of spraying the cleaning tool. But so there's what we have so far. So what I did is I actually used, I kind of played around with this, and this is what I found the best. Granny apple green, and then I added little splotches of pretty peacock. So let me show you what I mean. So I fully inked him in granny apple green. Again, not super hard because I knew I was going to add another color. And then I went in with my peacock and kind of just hit, and if you get a line on the edge, it's okay. I just hit like a couple spots. Now I know I'm going from green, and green is going to pick up on the peacock. Since they're in pretty much the same color family, and this is darker than the green, I'm okay with it. If you're not okay with that, the other thing you could do is use a sponge dauber, pick up ink, and just dab it on there. So that's another option. And then, let me see if I can bring this back in so I can show you. I kind of had him swimming off, but you don't really want to have him off of the card. So I'm going to go right about here. Now, one other thing you do want to use, if you are stamping on a regular desk, I would definitely use a stamping mat. But I have a piece of paper, and then I have that acrylic photo stamp down there. So I have something, but you need a cushion when you're stamping on photopolymer, or stamping with photopolymer, because it doesn't have the cushion like a rubber stamp does. So we're gonna lift that up. Now, while this is still wet-ish, here's what I'll say, ish is the key word there. I'm gonna just take my Wink of Stella, and I'm kind of trying to spread a little bit of that green ink to fill in his color. And if you notice that you don't really think it's good enough, you can go ahead and grab your granny apple. Just pick up, you don't want it to be too heavily inked. That's the only thing I would say. And maybe just bring a little bit of your green to the edge of his shell. Just add a little bit more color in. Again, it really is up to what you want to do. I really need to ink my tube because we use these for a lot of cards. So if they were a little bit juicier, I probably wouldn't need to go back into this, but it's no big deal. So there's that. And now we're going to get on to our starfish. I'm just going to open both of these. So Flirty Flamingo and Petal Pink. And I'm going to stamp up here, but I'm also going to do my inside panel, which is just down at the bottom. So I just used the two different sets for that. Is this the same? Nope, where's my other one? Here it is. We use both of those. So I use the larger and the smaller. And we also do have, you could add in another sea turtle if you wanted to, because we definitely have lots of things to choose from. Now you do want to, again, pick a side you're going to go with. So I'm going to just stamp both with the dark first. So Flirty Flamingo would be the dark. So I'm going to just stamp, maybe do like a little rotation. And then same for this. This is going to be on the inside. You can do as many as you like. They say 3 is visually pleasing, but you know, whatever you want to do. Okay, then I'm going to grab my Stampin' Scrub and I'm going to just clean these off before I flip them. Basically just to ensure that I don't end up getting it on my fingers and then it transfers onto the card because I'm kind of sloppy. So then we're going to go in with the other side. So I just flipped it over from detailed to smooth, and we're going to go in with the Petal Pink. And Petal Pink is way lighter, so even if you don't stamp off, it's still super light. Okay, and with this one, and if they don't really 100% line up, that's also no problem. Just, you know, it's creative license. All right, and the only thing I'm going to do before I emboss, I'm going to just grab a little bit of the basic beige ink with a blending brush. I said mini, but I just grabbed whichever one looked basic beige-ish. And I'm starting off and just kind of going around. It's pretty light. Probably because I don't use it all that often and it's never been re-inked. And you just want to give a little tone to your card. So there's that. Now, before I finish, let me just close this for a second. I'm going to go ahead and run the, oh, nope, one more thing, forgot. Have to add my sentiment first. So I used the sentiment, thinking of you today. This is from Hope You Know. Could do miss you, hello friend, whichever, but it's a nice sentiment. So we're going to ink this in Pretty Peacock. And you just kind of line this up straight-ish. And there you go. All right, now put that on the side. Just going to give that just a moment for that to dry so you don't get an ink transfer onto your embossing folder. So then what we're going to do is we're going to slide this in, and I usually use the black line just to make sure what I'm stamping is lined up straight. And nope, it's not, because I don't know what I did. Hold on. So we're going to put this in, closing it. And this, if you have a big shot, is where you want to use the blue plate, because the Stampin' Up! Folders are not the same as the Sizzix folders. And I'm going to run this through. It still does feel a little tight when you take that first crank, but you just have to go through the first crank. And then you'll get a really nicely embossed image. So remember, when you are stamping, I'm not stamping, when you're embossing, if you want the stuff to you, you want the Stampin' Up! Up or the Sizzix up. That means that it will emboss to you. So when you flip it over, there are some times when you might want to have it debossed, but if you want it raised, you need to have it up. So the up. Hope that makes sense. So then we're going to just grab again the basic beige, and I'm going to hit it with my blending brush. Just kind of going around really the edges Doesn't even need to be the whole thing. Just to kind of add a little bit of something. You could even tear the edges a little bit if you wanted to. That looks pretty nice. If you wanted a little bit more of like a, not really beat up, but I guess distressed look. And now all we have to do is assemble. So this is our inside panel. This is our front panel. So we have our card base. Again, this is Azure Afternoon, 4 1/4 by 11, scored at 5 1/2. So I'm going to just reinforce this with my bone folder, and then we'll adhere these, and that's it. I hope you found this video useful. I know this had a lot of techniques that maybe some people haven't done before, or maybe you've heard of it, but you really weren't sure what to do. But stamping with your embossing folder, or also stamping with an embossing folder onto DSP, or stamping onto DSP, which if you're not familiar, Designer Series paper, it's just our pattern paper. It's really a whole new way to add a lot of something without really that much work. It kind of is helping you along to be creative without a super amount of effort. And we have a lot of really great pattern papers, which is nice. But also, if you don't have one, you can do a DIY, which is another way to look. If you search my channel, there are definitely some DIY DSPs. So make your own DSP, which is really fun. I did it once with a camping card. That was super, super fun. But here is our card. One of them definitely has a little bit more heavy on the wink of Stella, excuse me, than the other one. But I hope you like this card. It's really, really simple to make. You can swap out to a different folder if you don't happen to have this one, which is cool because use what you have. And then when you're finished with that, you can buy something new. And I thank you so much for watching. It is actually the 9-year anniversary of me having a YouTube channel. Who knew that this would last for 9 years? So if you have a family member, a friend, a coworker, or someone else who loves to craft that you think would be interested in this channel, please share it with them. We would love to have some new subscribers. I want to thank you so much for watching. Any of the products that are still for sale in the online store, because we are going through the transition of our catalog and things will be selling out soon. If you click the link below, it does take you directly to my online store. Before we wrap it up, I just want to mention one other thing. We do have some in colors that are going to be going, that are going to be making way for some new colors. I will tell you, I only like about 3 of these colors. I know everyone is in love with mauve. Mauve is super 90s to me, and I already lived that, so I guess that is just not my color. It wasn't my favorite, but I love the copper clay. I love the pebble path. Actually, even wild wheat kind of grew on me in a certain couple combos, but these are the colors that are going to be retiring. So if you need to get the ink refills, get them now. If you want to get paper before it sells out, if you want to get an ink pad, or you weren't sure if you did or didn't want to get an ink pad, now would be the time to do it. Thank you so much for watching me. I would love to have you subscribe if you're new here. And if not, give me a thumbs up, leave me a comment. All those help to support me with absolutely no money spent from you. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day.